Welcome back. We're going to continue with our project. If you haven't checked it, you can go and check. If you haven't checked the part one, if you haven't checked the part one, you can go and check it. So in the part one, this is what we did. We did all the UI. You can see from here, blah 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 blah, the logins and everything. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the functionality. So we're going to connect our project to Firebase so we can be able to upload, login, and do all those other things, right? So what I need us to do now is to set up our project, or our project actually, on Firebase, right? So I believe you need to have a let me see if I believe you need to have a Google email or a Google account, so to be able to use this Firebase service. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a project. I'm going to call it papers, right? I'm going to accept this and create. I'm just going to accept everything here. So we're gonna give it a few minutes so that it sets up our project. So our new project is done. Let's give it a minute. So now we can actually add our app to Firebase, right? So we can add this project to our Firebase. So we're going to use the web version. So you have iOS, Android, and the web version here. So our web app, what is it called? Papers app. Let me add the dash. We're not going to do any hosting, so it's okay. You can just skip this and register the app. So in order to connect to this project with our app here, our web app, you need to have this installed and take all this configuration and take all this configuration into your project so that it can be able to communicate with the Firebase project that we just created. So but first we need to install Firebase, right? So I'm going to open the integrated terminal here and open another one here. So we need to install Firebase, and then once we are done, they say you can initialize Firebase and begin using the SDKs for the product you like to use. So this is what we can copy from here. What I'm gonna do is come into this src folder here and create a folder called, I'm gonna call it services, and then I'm gonna create a file called firebase.js. So remember in the previous video I said if you're using vid and then you're going to have some sort of JSX in your file, you're going to need to use the .jsx file extension. But since here we're not going to use any sort of like JSX in our file, we can use the .js extension. It's okay. And so I'm just going to copy this thing I copied here, paste. Let me remove the comments. So I would advise you to actually set up your own project on Firebase, because by the time this video gets uploaded, I would have deleted the project, so you won't be able to use these credentials here. So let me delete this. We don't need the analytics. So I'm gonna need us to import a few things. So we're gonna use the auth, get auth. Let me see. So obviously I won't be able to import because it's not yet done installing here. I don't know what's the problem, but then here we're gonna need to import and then we're gonna posit the app variable here that was created, and then we're gonna need to use this auth in our project, so we're gonna need to export it. And then I also gonna need to export database, and then, or not actually a database, but then the Firestore instance, so we can be able to use Firestore in our project. Firestore, and then we pass the app here. And also we need to be able to use this across our project. I'm gonna need to use the export. So yeah, I believe in our Firebase file. This is all we need, but we need to wait for it to finish installing so we can import these two files. I mean, these two functions here, the get Firebase and then the get auth one. So we are done installing the Firebase, so it means now we can import. Oh no, doesn't want to help me with the suggestions, so I'm going to import from Firebase auth get auth. I also need to import the get Firestore. Import supposed to come from, it's supposed to come from Firestore. What is this Firestore? Yeah, so now we have initialized our app. So what I need us to do now is continue to the console. So we need to allow our app to use the authentication and the cloud Firestore. So these are the two services we're going to need. So let's go to authentication here and get started. And so these are the providers you can use. So you can use like the Google login, the Google login, Facebook, blah blah. We're going to use the email and password one, and then you need to enable it here. Save. I believe you also need to use, let's see, all the products. We also need the Firestore. So create database, and we're just gonna leave it in like this. I'm not going to change anything here. So far we have set up our Firestore and authentication. So it means we can now, oh, also we need the storage. We need to use the storage, this one where we're going to upload those files, right? So we need the storage. Done. So these are the products we're going to use: storage to save the files, Firestore to save the information about that particular file, like the name of the question paper, and then the authentication for all the users that have signed in, right? So we can go back to our project and actually start with like the auth routes, like register and logging in. So what I want to do is create a file here which will deal with everything to do with the user. So we can say export constant login user, and then this function takes in three things. We'll take in the email and password. So constant response. So there's a function we need to use. So also the function is an asynchronous async. So there's a function we can use from the Firestore called sign in with email and password, and then what's this? Okay, that's, and then it takes in the auth. Remember we included our auth in here. So here's the auth that it is talking about. So it needs this auth instance, so we can use it in here, the auth, import it, and then it takes in the email and the password, and then we can simply return whatever the response is. Save. Can do the same thing again for registering a user. Register user. We're gonna need the name, email, and password for the user to be able to register. Password. The same thing, constant response. Wait, I'm gonna need to use the async here. So also Firebase offers us a function called, let me see, create. What is it? Create, let me see something here. Create user with email and password. So basically this function will register this user with the email and password. So let's do this. So it takes in the auth instance again, it takes in the email and the password. However, remember we also passed in the name of the user, so we want the name. What we're going to do is if response.user, so we're saying if the user has successfully managed to register. So obviously this user object won't be null, so it means the user would have managed to register. Then we can now go and add this name to and attach this name to this particular user, right? So there's also a function called, I think it's also from Firebase, it's called add. Is it add update? No, let's see profile. Let me type profile here. Update, wait, is it? So we're going to use this function called update profile. Update profile. So once we know the user has successfully registered, we can now go ahead and update the profile. The profile is the function that we just imported here, and then this function takes in the user. So the user is supposed to be this one, right? So we're gonna simply go to auth and say current user, because we know the user is successfully registered. And it also takes in an object, so an object which you can update the display name, the profile photo URL, so the profile picture. But then for us, we just simply going to update the display name with the name and save these, and we can return the response. Right, so these are the two functions that we can use to register and to log in the user. And I also want to use use a function here, create a function here called get user. We say if auth.current user is null, so we're simply going to return. So if there is no user, we cannot return it. But then if there is user, we're going to return an object with name. We're going to say I also want to do this, so let me grab the current user from auth. So we can say current user dot display name, and the email we can also take it here, dot email. And then you can also check if the email is verified. I mean, if this user is verified, but then we're not going to make use of this. But then yeah, there's a lot of properties attached to this current user. So we check first if it's not null. So if it's null, you just return. So you're not going to get anything. If it's null, just the return, and if not, just get the user. So this is the functions that we have. So we can go into our auth pages, the login and the register, and start registering the user. So what do we need? So I'm going to use state. So let's have a user here, set user, and then use state. And then I'm not actually going to create like 3 separate state for email, password, and the name. I'm just simply going to use this user as an object which contains the name, email, and password. So these are the 3 properties we need to register, right? And I'm going to give this input the names. So this is the name. The name here is going to be email, and the name here is going to be password. And you have to make sure that these names here, the names of this input, are exactly the same as these ones here, because if not, you're going to have a problem, because it's going to update a field that is not inside your use state here. So you need to make sure that you have the name. So let's just say you had something like username. So you're going to put this username into this use state, and then in here you won't be able to access the name because you wouldn't have updated it. So you need to make sure that the names of this input are exactly the same as this are exactly the same as this use date. So here I'm going to return the name. So now we need to update the user. So let me go back here, get started. So we need to update the user, right? I mean, update the use date when the user starts typing in their information. It's a register. So constant handle user input. So since the input has a name, we can get the name, and we can also get the value from the target. But since we don't know what this name is, it could be the name, it could be the email, it could be the password. We're just going to let JavaScript to decide to check whatever the name is so it can update it accordingly. So we're just gonna say set user, and we're just gonna pass in whatever that is in user, and say name value. So if we just simply going to update whatever this value is, so if it's a password, it's going to update the password. If it's the email, it's going to update the email. And we take this function here and we say on change, call this guy, and I'm gonna copy down this line, 1 2 3. So if I open my inspect here and go to console, clear this, if I do this console user, obviously once I start typing in here Darima, you can see the name here is Darima. If I create the password, you see the password is updated and the email is also updated at the same time. So it means our object is exactly the same, is exactly how we want it, right? So it means we know how, it means now we are able to grab the values from our form, right? So what we need to do is, I can close this. What we need to do now is try to push this user into our database project. We actually can try now to register this user. Constant handle user registration. So this function will get fired once the user tries to register, right? We're not going to do any sort of like validation, so I'm not going to do that. We're just going to do try catch here, and we're going to pass in the user into our function, the one we created in here. So we have a register function here, so we can just pass in those details into our function. So await register user, and you can simply pass in the user. So if this function fails, it will throw an exception, right? And then we're gonna catch it in here, and then we can console log our problem, console error. And then if it doesn't go into the catch block, it means it would have registered the user. And then we can simply you know what, I'll need to navigate to the profile page. Remember we installed, okay, we don't need this. Remember we installed a React router, right? So the React router DOM in the first video. So I'm going to use the hook here called use navigate. So we're going to use this hook to navigate to the profile page. Navigate. So here, if the user successfully registers, we're gonna navigate and then we pass in where we want to go. We're going to the profile. So this function gets called on button click, and then since we have a form, it's gonna try to do a form submission. Let's stop it from doing that here, and we can simply call this function on button click, and pass in this function. Let's see. So yeah, I believe this is what we have so far. and then also I need us to open the authentication here so we can check the users. So now let's try to register, right? Let's try to register. I'm gonna say technology ted@email.com, and password here you can just say suggest strong password, hit submit, and it means we have managed to register because it took us to the profile page, right? Because remember here we said if this function manages to succeed, so if this function doesn't throw any exception, go to the profile. I mean, if it managed to register, sorry, if it managed to register, just navigate to the profile. If it fails, it won't go to the next line here, so it will jump into the catch block and console out the error. So if we open our project here, we're supposed to see the user that has just registered, and there we have it. It means we are on the right track, right? But then, however, there's a problem here. If I go to the register function, I shouldn't be able to go to the register function when I am a logged in user, right? So we need to prevent that. How do we do that? I'm gonna need us to use this hook here, the use effect. So the use effect here will check the state sorry, will check the state of the user, right? So we'll check the state of the user. If the user is logged in, will not render this page, will just direct the user to the profile page. But then if they are not logged in, will allow them to register, right? So once you are registered, you shouldn't be able to come to this page. It wouldn't make sense once you are a logged in user, and then when you go to the register page, it allows you to go there, right? So how are we going to do that? Sorry. So we need to make use of the auth here from our Firebase, obviously the Firebase project here, and then listen to state changes. And then I'm simply going to say I want to have a flag here, constant logged in, set logged in, right? So use state, we're gonna make it null. So since this function exposes the user, we're gonna say we're gonna simply pass in this the set in logged in. We're gonna pass in the user, right? So this user here, and also this function here returns the function called as unsubscribe. So let's do the unsub actually, and so we can detach it here. So we can do the return and unsubscribe to this passing like this. So we're going to do this if the logged in, because remember when you land on this page, the logged in is what is null. So if logged in changes no longer to be null, so if it's no longer null, we simply going to what? We simply going to navigate due to the profile page. So we no longer need this line here. You can simply copy it here and put it here, right? So now if I try to go to the register function, I mean the register page, I shouldn't be able to go there, because you see, if I type in register here, it doesn't allow me to stay on that page because I'm a registered user, so, or I'm a logged in user rather. I'm a logged in user, so it takes me to the profile. So however, we need to also do the what? We need to also do the login page. So the login page will be similar to this, to what you are seeing in here. So let's go to the login and do exactly what we did in the register. So here's gonna be the email, the name is going to be password, and I'm gonna say on change. I know I haven't created this function. I'm gonna say handle user input, copy this line and put it here, go up here and create another use state. So with this use state, we don't need the name because we are not registering, we are logging in. So we're gonna have an email and password. I need to import this, and I think I'm gonna copy this line here, copy this line, I mean not the line, the function, paste here, because it's simply the same thing. And then we can have a function here, say constant login user, or handle login user, handle login user and it's gonna be an asynchronous function. Use try catch, but then obviously here we are no longer using the, and obviously we're gonna need the prevent default to stop the page from submitting. And then here we're just gonna say await login user and pass in the user. And then if it fails to log in, you just simply go into console out the error, and then this part this function will get called on button click. Right, and then the last thing I need is this use effect functionality here. So if I paste this, I need to import this. I also need to import the auth. So this is what we have. Wait, we don't have the set logged in, right? So let's have this state here, set logged in. We're gonna have logged in, set state, and make it null. Save. So if I try to go to the login page, oh no, navigate is not defined. So we need to import the hook. Okay, we have it here. So we can import the hook here, the use navigate, and say use navigate use navigate here, and save. And we are here. So if I try to go to the login, look at down here, so it says this is for login. If I try to go to the login, it shouldn't allow me because I have already logged in. I'm already a logged in user, right? So it means for our authentication we are already there, so we now can log in and register.